Welcome everybody, this is Rev Games. We're going to be doing a banlist critique for GOAT format. And before we get started with this, I just want to reiterate it's always appreciated if you like or subscribe or anything like that. Secondarily, I'm trying out a bunch of different types of videos. Over the last few weeks, we've done the game theory type stuff. We did some gameplay and deck building, or if you hear thunder and lightning, by the way, it is raining. If you hear that in the background, might get some cool ambiance. I don't know if my mic picks it up, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, we were doing a bunch of different types of videos. So let me know what you like. I did the um, what did I do? The meta discussions, and then I did just a few like random discussions and tier lists and stuff, and haven't done really that much gameplay. Just because I've been like mostly playing GOAT format, but um, yeah, that's what it is. Let me know what you like, and really just to set the stage for kind of what I'm going for here. Like I do not expect uh, to have a fully informed opinion. A lot of these are going to be kind of half-baked takes because I'm not going to be redoing like the whole ban list. I'm just going to be talking about cards and some of their design and what I think makes for a good and bad game, really centered around one ban list philosophy, which I think Konami missed the boat on and has continued to miss the boat on for a long time, which is just how to have a philosophy on what you ban and what you don't ban, all that good stuff. Really, what I think the correct way to do a ban list is to reduce the amount of non-games as much as possible and get that as close as you can to zero. The most fun that I've really ever had with any Yu-Gi-Oh game, and I do like Goat and Edison format, but is the games that you go back and forth and there's interaction with the field and you have to set stuff and maybe there's a bluff and there's more back and forth in several turns and no really degenerate stupid shit like getting OTK'd turn one or FTK'd I guess you'd call it with like library or some bullshit dragon turbo OTKing you for no reason after they trunade you. Like that is just not good gameplay. So or I mean even with bread and butter meta decks, just having a pot charity or graceful and or your opponent having a pot charity or graceful and you not having any, a lot of those do feel like non-games. So I think really the way I would design ban lists is figuring out how we can reduce the amount of non-games as much as possible. Now, of course, it's a game of variance, but that's going to happen. But that's how I would handle it. Same with stuff like Future Fusion and Edison format. Like that is just absolutely stupid. So we're going to go over these cards. This needs to stay banned. Emperor End, Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the End, rather. Very poorly designed card. I do not understand why they made the conditions, the summoning condition for this card that cost light and dark. Light and dark? Like, why couldn't it have been water and earth or wind and fire or something? I just don't think light and dark needed any fan service at all. So the fact that they also printed like this and BLS and Chaos Sork as the most powerful Chaos monsters, and they all share the same attribute requirements, like that's just really stupid. Makura, I think, is a cool card. This was part of some degen FTK. I think it involved Call of the Haunted or something. So I think it has to stay banned. Although I do think it is a cool card. But if it, I think another big reason that it was banned is in the OCG. It's not necessarily that people were building their decks around the OTK, it was that you could slash the OTK in like anything. Like you just, I think it was a 2 card combo or 3 card combo, and it's just like, oh, I guess you just win, like out of nowhere, like just like a back pocket OTK, which is really dumb. Witch of the Black Forest, this is a very powerful card, and I think it enabled some bullshit with like Yatagarasu and Chaos Emperor Dragon, but I think this could actually get unbanned. And yeah, it's probably too powerful, but I don't think it creates too many non-games if you make a few other adjustments to the ban list. This card can eat dirt. Fiberjar is so dumb. Yatagarasu is dumb as shit. Magical Scientist is dumb as shit. This is way too powerful. Change of Heart is way too powerful. Regeki is like it again. When you think about the point this game was in when they designed this card, you'd think when they're designing the set, they'd sit down and say, okay, we have to plan things out. You know, we're going to have to create new sets for a while, probably. So we should think about the power level of cards and maybe the relative strength of and the trade-offs of a spell card versus a trap card and monster card. And then they print like a monster card with 900 attack that requires like a tribute. And then they fucking print this Regeki. Like they couldn't have sat down and been like, okay, you know, we're gonna create something on like the fissure power level, like destroy a low attack monster. Then somebody was like, no, just destroy all your opponent's monsters. And then somebody else in the room is like, maybe we should, you know, just have it destroy all face-up monsters on the field. That seems a little bit more fair. And then the other dude is just like, nah, all your opponent's monsters. And they're like, okay, let's try to meet in the middle here. Um, how about all monsters on the field, like Darkhold? He's like, no, fuck it, all of your opponent's monsters. It's like, okay, let's try to meet in the middle here. How about two monsters on the field on your opponent's side of the field? She's like, nope, fuck it, all of them. Like, I just do not get like what they were thinking with Regeki for cards this powerful, like Harpy's Feather Duster. Like, what were they on? Like, I I just some of these cards are just laughably bad. So all of these, I think, without question, are just unbelievably bannable. They printed a card that shut off the ability to play spells. They had no idea what they were doing when they were making this game. They really had no idea. Butterfly Dagger Elma. This card is. I think this card was collateral damage to some sort of like gear free library FTK. And I think it kind of has to stay banned, which is going to be another card I'm going to ban. I'm getting ahead of myself, which is Sinister Serpent. I think this would have. I think this should have been. If they were going to have Sinister Serpent unbanned, I think this should have been unbanned and they should have unbanned the other cards. Because Sinister Serpent is the control, like long game version of Butterfly Dagger Elma, and Butterfly Dagger Elma is the Sinister Serpent of stuff like Warrior. I feel like it's kind of their infinite resource. So I think to really equalize the playing field between aggressive strategies that are attacking and maybe just need a nudge with like a little bit more attack, Elma could have been Warrior's Sinister Serpent. So I think they should have coexisted beside each other, but the biggest problem I have with cards like this is the ceiling is too high on how much you can plus with it. It's not uncommon if you count just how often Sinister Serpent is recurring to just go +5 with it or +6, or whatever, even if it's +3, that's just ridiculous. And when you pair it with stuff like Regeki Break, which I don't think is independently a broken card. In fact, I really like the card, but the issue with stuff like Regeki Break in GOAT format is that the discard cost is always free. And it's a chainable, and this goes for Phoenix Wing Wind Blast too, but it's a chainable back row. It can target anything, and that's very powerful, but that was supposed to be offset by a cost. And with Thunder Dragons running around and Sinister Serpent and Night Assailant, which uh, another spoiler is going to be going to 1 in this banlist critique, I just don't think that's really good for the game. I think I just don't think. Pardon me, hiccuping here. My biggest issue is that it pushes every deck in the same direction that is going to play a real game. And I'm not talking about Burn or Reasoning Gate Turbo, like a real game plan. not some alt win shit. It forces you to have to be like, okay, what engine am I ever gonna find better that's better than Serpent, Assailant, Thunder Dragon, Chaos, Regeki Break, abuse the shit out of Trinity. You just can't really find a better engine, and I just don't think that's good gameplay. Chaos Turbo doesn't necessarily have 100% non-games, but the fact that they can abuse Trinity so hard, I think, is an issue. So yeah, Sinister Serpent catches a ban. This stays banned just because you shouldn't really be able to go +5 off cards. That's just not good. BLS, this card I think really just pushes the boss monster decision to one decision. It's more or less, can you play BLS, and if not, why? I don't think that's good for the game. I don't think it was smart to make the design of this card have to banish lights and darks, which are already the most powerful cards in the format. So this, I think, 100% is getting a ban. Next is Dark Magician of Chaos. This is one of my favorite cards, but at the same time, it's at the center of a lot of bullshit FTKs with looping dimension fusions and looping stuff with spell economics and cannon soldiers. So this card just has to be banned. This was at a time before Konami learned the lesson of once per turn clauses in cards, and I am not a fan of erratas. I think that's a cop out, and I don't think that works with physical card games. The fact that they like there are so many different printings of so many different cards that I have, and nothing is consistent, and it really goes to show how bad Konami is at critical thinking. Like you just can't do that with physical games. If you had a card with shitty card text, it has to have the shitty card text forever. That's how card games work. You can't have 8 different cards of a card or 8 different texts of a card and expect to be taken seriously. That's really stupid. Sacred Phoenix, this card can go to 3. It's kind of funny with another card, which I'll skip to, which is Reflect Pounder. What was considered good back in the day? Even Twin-Headed Behemoth, this can go to 3, this goes to 3, this goes to 3. These cards were all very, very prevalent in the meta, and it's just kind of funny to see how much things have changed. Jinzo, I really don't like cards that shut off entire mechanics, but I do like that it is a tribute. Another card we're going to talk about later in the video is Royal Decree, but I think Jinzo's fine at 1. It realistically, with an effect this powerful, should stay at 1, and it hasn't really ever caused any issues in GOAT format, but it's just such a powerful effect, but it's balanced by the fact that you have to more or less develop a game plan to get it out. It's not just like flip decree and you might just win the game from that. This doesn't really create non-games. It's very powerful. Same with Tribe. DD Warrior Lady, I think, is one of the most powerful but also balanced cards in the game. It's actually why it's my favorite card, pretty much, which is it just has a ton of utility. And I don't know, I just love the art and everything. It's so fucking cool. But I think it can stay at 1. Exiled at 1 is totally fine. Sangen at 1's fine. Lily, I feel like if you move this up with a lot of the other changes that I make, that could cause issues. So I'm just going to keep it at 1 for now, but you could nitpick and maybe move it to 2. Now, here's 2 unbelievably huge problem cards that just create massive non-games. They have collateral damage, like Sanctuary of this. What's this called? Protector of the Sanctuary. This card can be unbanned because we're going to ban both of these. They just make it so that bullshit degen strategies thrive and you just cheese wins. And I just don't like cards that can +5 or +4, or even +3. I think like the upper limit of what a card could do is like +2, +3 if there's some like huge skill thing or your opponent is just a bonehead idiot and plays into a massive mirror force or something, but these cards are just too free for the effects you're getting, and they're always used in degenerate ways. And a lot of the times it just boils down to if you have the out or not, or if you get bluffed for 4 turns in a row and then they're like, well, all your outs are gone, so here's a jar, fuck you. It's just not smart gameplay or game design. Unbelievably poorly designed cards. Exodia, all unbanned. Sinister Serpent catches a band. Trinity, you'd be very hard pressed to find an argument why this should be in the format at all. They're so powerful that GOAT format more or less is a deck building exercise a lot of the times on how much you can abuse Trinity or how much your deck can be resilient to getting duoed or how hard it can abuse Graceful and its discard. I just don't think these cards are well designed. They're just too free. If there were some sort of condition or it was attached to like a monster body that there was some sort of tributing condition or you had to set up a grave or something, that would be totally fine. But these are just very poorly designed cards, and I've never heard a cogent argument on why these should be in the game. And they're even more divisive at 1 because I know it sounds crazy, but at 3, like if you could run 3 of these, pretty much every starting hand would have 1 or 2 of them, and you know the difference between, I said this in another video, but the difference between one player activating 2 Trinity pieces and another player activating 0 is much, much larger than one player activating, let's just say, 4 Trinity pieces and the other activating 6. I know that sounds insane, but the difference is much, much smaller than number gets on activations, or the difference is much, much bigger, rather, um, than the smaller the number gets on activations. Heavy Storm, I think this keeps degen back row and overcommitting in check. I don't think it's a necessarily well-designed card. It's probably too powerful, but there are a lot of other unbelievably powerful spell and trap cards and floodgate type effects that I think need to be kept in check, so this has to stay at 1 in my opinion. Snatch Steal, again, kind of poorly designed card, but it's not creating too many non-games. It can steal you a game, pun intended, but it doesn't create a non-game. Same with a lot of this stuff. MST, I think, is a candidate to at least 2, if not just straight to 3. This is one of the most democratic fair cards, and gatekeeps so much bullshit that I just think this has to go to 3 or 2. Especially like if we're gonna take jars from burn, and we're gonna be like, bringing this, like that's just gonna make Burn's life very hard. So there'd probably have to be some sort of concession with Burn. Like we're not gonna touch gravity bind or level limit area B. But Burn gets a lot worse with this, or they just are gonna have to find a different way to win. But I just think this just shuts off so many stupid cards, and the fact that in this format that Royal Decree is at 3, and I have a bone to pick with Royal Decree. I just don't think it's good game design to have a trap card that says no to an entire type of card in the game. Like 1/3 of the types of cards, spell, traps, and monsters is just shut off from one single activation that's chainable. That just, like, the fact that this is at 1 might be one of like the top 5 biggest mistakes of the GOAT format ban list, in my opinion. I cannot believe Mystical Space Typhoon is at 1. Same with Edison, quite frankly. Like Edison, this being at 1 in Edison is a crime against humanity. It's fucking egregious. In GOAT, it's bad, but it's not as bad as Edison. Lightning Vortex, this card probably should go to 3. I think this is, again, just a more fair type of removal. It only affects face-up stuff. It has a cost. It's just a better designed card. And if your opponent really, really overcommits, you can punish them. But special summoning's hard enough in GOAT format that this is totally fine at 3. Plus, hint, hint, or I guess spoiler alert, goats and meta aren't being touched, so this could have utility somewhere. So it goes to 3. This is a good stall card that I think is great at 1. Card destruction, instaban, hand interaction is very bad for the game if not implemented properly. And the fact that you can just pitch an entire hand is just a poorly designed card. I don't like it at all. I don't really think there's much else to be said about that. There's just ways to do hand disruption and there are ways not to. And a spell card is not the way you do it. Pitching an entire hand is definitely not the way to do it. United We Stand and Mage Power. These 2 cards probably could each go to 2. I just don't know if there's something like super degenerate that would crop up because you might be able to end games way too quickly. But equip cards are just so bad because if you for instance put this on even something really good like a Mataza and then it gets Sakuretsu'd, you just went -2. So they just have enough risk embedded in the card design that I think they could easily go to 2. Especially because we're going to be hitting a lot of what I would consider degenerate spell and trap removal, like Trunade, Cold Wave, and Decree later on in the video, and we are bumping up Mystical Space Typhoon. So I think these could pretty easily go to 2. Maybe there's an argument to have Mage Power go to 3 and like United We Stand to 2, or maybe this to 2 and this to 1. I'm really not sure. Mage Power is the less powerful of the 2. Mirror Force and Torrential, I think these cards are probably at design were maybe too powerful for their time, but I still think they're pretty good for the game, and they do punish greed. So I like that they were designed as trap cards, which um, can be interacted with and disrupted, which is I think pretty good for the game. Call the Haunted's totally fine. Magic Cylinder. Um, I feel like because we already neutered Burn, we could probably move this to 2. Because when we think about what we did to Burn, like we're bringing back MSTs, we're basically gutting their whole draw engine. Although we're gutting these for like every other powerful deck, so I feel like you just have to throw them a bone at some point. So Cylinder could probably go to 2. I just don't know if would people play this in normal decks if you moved it up to something like even crazy like 3. Like how annoying would it be every time you attack to wonder if you're going to get cylindered for game? Although that it kind of does something similar to Ring of Destruction, which I like, which is that it rewards good players a lot because Ring of Destruction, because it's obviously more powerful than Magic Cylinder, you almost always have to be thinking about how many hits you can take before you're in ring range if it hasn't been activated. If you have a ring, how early you're going to activate it. If it's paired with something like a Solemn, how you're going to order that. If you're going to have to summon something that's big enough and it gets ringed that you just auto lose. So I really think Ring of Destruction's probably too powerful of a card for its time, but it also is very highly skill intensive and it punishes people that don't like take it into consideration when they're playing. I think the same thing could be said to a lesser extent with Magical Cylinder. So I'm not sure. We'll just leave it at 1 because I'm unsure, but there probably is something we need to do to have burn strategies because I don't want every single deck to be a board-based strategy, and I don't want there to be 0 alt win stuff. And I think burn is a healthy part of any meta, but I just don't know what the best way to implement that would be. This is more kind of pointing out problem cards rather than solving the woes of burn if this shit got banned. Ceasefire. This could go to 2 in my opinion. I don't think it does anything broken. In fact, it probably is more along the lines of Mystical Space Typhoon, which is that it gatekeeps stupid shit, and it's not even really played at all. Yeah, this might even be able to go to 3. That might be a way to throw a bone to burn. Although I don't even know if burn would run that. Reckless Greed. This is, I think, a healthy card at 1. It might actually be healthier at 2. But I'm not going to spend too much time on like stuff like this just because these don't really create that many non-games. Although like chaining 3 Reckless Greeds sometimes does. Even 2 of them can be kind of crazy at times just because you're getting those cards earlier too. And sometimes you can just close out the game before you have to pay the full cost of skipping 2 draw phases. So I think Reckless Greed at a 1 is a perfectly designed card. Like this is exactly what Yu-Gi-Oh card design should be at 1, which is that it's a card that has, I think, a very powerful effect. It's packaged with a weaker type, that being a trap as opposed to a spell. Although I guess you could say it's chainable, but I think it overall is weaker as a trap than it would be if it were printed as a spell. And it has a very sizable drawback. I just think it's a very well designed card. Now at 3, that can cause some issues. I actually played 3 of these in Edison quite a few months ago in Blackwings, and it seems to kind of be catching on. Probably not by my doing, but you know, maybe somebody watched my videos. I don't know. But 3 of these, and people are running upstarts and jars and yadas, and I just think all of those in conjunction with each other are very bad because if you stack multiple of these, it gets really broken really quickly. And if you have just a bunch of them that you can activate and then end the game prior to having to skip the draw phases, you more or less went +1, or I guess, plus more if you activate multiple of them. So I think a card like this more or less always has to be at 1 or 2. 2 if you're feeling a little greedy. Um, Abyss Soldier, especially with Sinister Serpent gone, has to go to 3. There was some. What was the OTK with this? I don't think the OTK is even doable anymore. What was it? I think it might have been with Makura, or was it Elma? I can't even remember what this card does. It bounces something? Maybe it was bouncing like Call of the Haunted or something? I think it was. But this card can go to 3. This card goes to 3. Marauding Captain goes to 3. Again, a card that people thought was really good back in the day, myself included. Night Assailant, this goes to 1. I do not like costless discards. They are discards for a reason. Maybe, and especially that you can loop this with itself. That's just really stupid. Bad card design. This would have been more fair if it were structured like a Dark World card where it could miss timing. Missing timing is a topic for a whole nother video. That is the dumbest shit ever. That just shouldn't have ever been part of the game. Vampire Lord easily can go to 3. Creature swap. I don't think it creates any really non-games. But with meta and goats staying at 3 and a lot of like chaos stuff getting banned, I would just keep this at 2 for now. I'm really not sure if it would cause any issues if it went to 3. I doubt it. I'm leaning more like 75% towards 3, 25% keep it at 2, but I'm really not sure. Emergency provisions. This was used, I believe, in conjunction with good goblin housekeeping. And what you would do is I think you would have multiple good goblin housekeeping formed in a chain, and then you would chain emergency provisions as the last part of the chain. And then I'm trying to think, did the chain ordering matter? I can't even remember exactly how this card is worded. I don't know. I'm not sure it mattered. if somebody could remind me, because I don't know if this needed to be the last thing in the chain or maybe it was first, and then you activate these. I can't remember. I can't even remember what this card says. But basically, what you do is you'd like stack these, and then you would activate this at the end of the chain or whatever. And if you had 3 of these, I think you would draw like 9 cards or something, and then you'd have to shuffle 3 of them. I don't think this was a good move. I this is stupid when it resolves, but I just can't see that resolving enough for it to become an issue. So maybe this just goes to 3, this stays at 2. Because the opportunity for something stupid to pop up is there. I just feel like it's very unlikely. And the way stuff is built and the way decks work nowadays, I just don't think that would ever matter. But I don't like that this was taken as collateral damage unless there's some other OTK. I feel like this might have been part of some other OTKs too, but I'm not sure. Level limit area being gravity bind will kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. These cards, I don't necessarily love these type of effects, but I do think having viable burn strategies, if they're designed properly, is good. And I think stall can be good because it enables all kinds of stuff that I think is cool for the game, namely Exodia type stuff, namely wave motion cannon, final countdown, burn, all kinds of stuff, especially because Trunade is going away to a large extent. I would put it at 1 Trunade. This becomes a lot less degenerate, so I think these are fine at 2. Nobleman will stay at 2. If there were like some of the other changes that I'm not making, this probably should have been at 3, because we're kind of seeing the issue with flip effects, which is that if you run too many of them, like Chaos Turbidos alongside with Magician of Faith, it just gets really stupid really quickly. So this should have been at 3. I think at 2 it was a mistake. But at the time it was just fine because nobody knew that a valid game plan was just abusing the balls off Magician of Faith over and over again with Trinity. Reinforcement of the army, I think this is fine at 2 in current GOAT format, but with some of the changes that I'm making, and I'm really neutering stuff like Burn, a lot of other decks are going to get hit here in a second. Chaos is getting hit. This probably should go to 1 because Warrior would get a lot powerful just because there's not really anything I'm hitting with Warrior. Have I hit anything with Warrior yet? Not really. I've just been taking away a lot of Warrior's problems. So I feel like this would have to go to 1. I do like this card at 2, but it just, in the context of a lot of the other changes that I'd make, it probably would have to go to 1. Although Goat's meta is staying at 3, so maybe that keeps it in check. I'm really not sure. Upstart Goblin. I like this card at 3. I think it is an example of a very well-designed card, which is that you get something good. I think it fits as a spell, and it gives your opponent something good. My biggest issue is that it can quite frequently be used for what I would consider degenerate alt win conditions, namely win conditions that happen too quickly. And I also think it's really abusive when there's just blatantly overpowered cards relative to everything else in the format. Looking at these 3 guys, I think Upstart Goblin is, it's not broken, but it's too powerful when it just gets you closer to these cards and you play a 38 card deck, and it then incentivizes the use of Jar of Greed, and then that lets you play like a 36 card deck if you're playing 2 of those, and then every pot of greed you hit gets you closer to your charity, and then your charity gets you 1 or 3 draws closer to another Trinity piece, which then gets you closer to recycling with a Faith. It just, the way they cycle on each other is very, very bad for the game and bad for GOAT format. So I think Goblin is a well-designed card independently, but when it's paired with other cards that are just blatantly broken and blatantly like just orders of magnitude more powerful than other cards in the metagame, it just becomes a problem. The same thing goes with Edison and stuff like Super Rejuvenation. Upstart Goblin just makes that card better, and it makes stuff like Future Fusion dumb as fuck. One of my biggest calls, and I don't know how many of you just do Goat or just do Edison, but is that Upstart Goblin is going to become a bigger and bigger part of stuff like Diva Hero Beat, because that is a deck that's built on consistency, and that's a deck that wins with bomb cards like Miracle Fusion and getting a Stratos and getting a Future Fusion. So it serves a very similar purpose. I think Upstart Goblin is good when there's a more level playing field, but that's not the case in current GOAT format. Last turn, this card kind of does blow, but this is the definition of like a just non-game card. If you aren't familiar, what you basically do with this card is you use Wall of Revealing Light, and it's like a tier 7 deck, so I don't really have that much to complain about, but you basically use Wall of Revealing Light, get yourself really low, you summon a Jowgen, then you activate this, and that should win you the game because your opponent can't special summon. I just don't think that's very fun. Although it is an alt win condition, it requires some setup. So Solemn's at 3. I don't think it would ever get out of hand. I just never really liked the card, honestly. But I think it's fine at 2. Next is cards that aren't on the list, which I think is probably the most exciting part of the discussion. Cards that aren't on the list that probably should be. So I talked about Regeki Break. I think Regeki Break is an independently very, very well-designed card. I just think it is made worse and unfair and has way too many applications and is way too good with stuff like Serpent and a Chaos Engine. So I'm not going to be touching that. I think it's fine at 3. In fact, I think it's really good for the game at 3, especially when you get rid of Serpent and you get rid of Chaos. Speaking of Chaos, 3 Sork is a mistake. I think we want Chaos to still be a deck. I think it's fun. It's definitely got the best boss monster, which is getting banned. So I think 2 Sork is where we need to be. 3 is still way too much, in my opinion, despite them losing their big boss monster. So 2 Sork, we'd be putting that on the semi-limited list. For the limited list, Trinity, Cold Wave, and Decree all go on that. I don't think any of those cards are particularly healthy for the game at all. I just don't like blanket, turn off an entire mechanic in the game type cards. And Trinity particularly is just always used in the most degenerate ways. So yeah, and even Decree, which not enough people, in my opinion, complain about, just because there's really not that many people using it, because this just isn't really that trap heavy of a format. It's more of a principles thing. If you're going to be banning Imperial Order, I think you just have to ban, or at least limit Decree as well. Turning off an entire mechanic is not a good game design. Same with like how Edison or Royal Oppression works in Edison. Just saying no to special summoning and like having the choice to chain it whenever you want and activate it after you've already special summoned is just really, really stupid. So Decree's not as bad as Royal Oppression, but needs to get hit. Next is flips, and I had some thoughts on what some flip monsters would be and where they would go. I think Gravekeeper Spy is definitely very powerful, but with a lot of the changes we're making, I think we would definitely need something to keep aggro in check. And while I would say I don't really know what they were thinking when they designed a card this powerful that can just summon itself and has a 2000 butt and it has 1200 attack and it's a dark and it's part of an archetype, it's just unbelievably powerful for the time, which again nobody knew at the time. Nobody was running Spy. But I think it's healthy for the game. Still probably too powerful. It's kind of in like the Witch of the Black Forest camp. Like it's definitely too powerful of a card for the time, but doesn't ruin the game. Next up is Magician of Faith. This is a card that can basically run the game. It's made a lot less bad when you hit these three, but I still think it deserves a spot at 1. It's just very powerful to get a spell back. If these cards were not banned somehow, then it would have to go to 0. I just don't I just cannot believe that Magician of Faith at 3 was allowed to exist with these at, at 1. Just not good. Well, I'm losing my voice here. Next is Reasoning and Monster Gate. I don't know exactly where I would put these numbers wise, but I think they deserve a hit. If we're going to be getting rid of a lot of very powerful stuff like BLS, we're getting rid of this type of stuff. We're getting rid of Duo, which really hurts Reasoning Gate Turbo. We're getting rid of, all types of different engines. And we're keeping Scapegoats at 3. I think both of these would have to get hit somewhere. Probably, I mean, at a minimum, 2 each. Or maybe it's like a 1-3 type of thing, like maybe 3 Reasoning, 1 Monster Gate, or I'm not sure. I'm not sure which of those cards is a bigger problem. Because Monster Gate it does have a cost, which I like, but Reasoning you can whiff with and just go -1. So I think just starting off at 2-2, or maybe having like a 2-1 even. I'm really not sure what the right number is. The point is that I think those being at 3 in this format was a huge mistake, especially if we're going to make some of the bans and changes that we're proposing here. They just have to. They would take over the format. I mean, can you imagine with like a neutered burn deck, a neutered Chaos Turbo, and we're gonna neuter it here in a few minutes. Rescue Cat. Like how annoying it would be to have Reasoning Gate Turbo at full power. Although they would lose a Trunade, so that's something. Um, Next is Dust Shoot. I think Dust Shoot is an outright ban. I do not think this card was designed well. It causes a lot of issues in Edison format. It is hand knowledge is just too powerful. And I know it's better in the hands of good players because they can play around it more and good players can use hand knowledge more effectively than bad players, but I think the hand is I really, really like, I'm trying to think of a way to put this, but I really like there being a clear delineation between hand and field in card games. I think hand disruption has to be very difficult to achieve. And hand knowledge is just a whole nother like thing. Hand knowledge is just absurd that this was allowed to exist at any point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, especially this early. And I really like when to make a corollary to Edison, like cards I'm trying to think cards such as Gores or Tragodia or Battle Fader or even worse Honest or Kalut, those are just not good cards for the game because you can't really interact with them because they're in your hand. And I like that you can't interact with the hand, but being able to play cards from hand like that on your opponent's turn is dumb. Trap Dust Shoot has similar issues where if you go first, it's just so much better for you because you can set your hand, or like late game, if you just happen to have not drawn your Dust Shoots, they're going to be bricked. It's just a very, very poorly designed card. There are a lot of other thoughts I had on Dust Shoot earlier, which I was thinking of that I'm failing to recall right now, but I don't think there's any excuse for this card to be at all near the game in any form or capacity. Hand knowledge is just way too powerful. I uh, I don't know what you could really do to gatekeep stupid shit in the hand, but I think stuff maybe Donzalug and Spirit Reaper are enough. I'm really just unsure. I just don't like the way Dust Shoot works. I think there's enough on that. And lastly is we already said we were going to ban Library, but lastly, for degenerate stuff is last will and rescue cat. I don't know what the correct number would be if one of them gets banned and the other stays at 3. Well, last will is definitely not staying at 3. I'll just say that. I don't know if last will would stay at 1. I just feel with Stein being a thing, if you're gonna have Stein in the format, you have to keep it honest somehow. So I think last will would almost have to catch a ban, and I think rescue cat is a cool card, and I think if you're just gonna have a deck that maybe has it and some Mindless Radiance and Pandas, and it spam those, especially in a pre-synchro era, I don't really think it's all that broken, but it's more just the combination of the two when you go Last Will Cat that I think really breaks the game, or Last Will Cat into Stein. And Stein's another card that potentially causes a lot of issues, but if we're taking out Trunade and Cold Wave, and you still have Karibo in the format, you still have Threatening Roar and Waboku, I think you have enough ways to deal with Stein where it's not really an independently problem card. So I think the issue is Last Will. So I think Last Will would catch a ban, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else that really would be an issue if Cat was at 3, and I think the answer is no. So Last Will gets banned too. So that's really it. I think that would solve a lot of the non-interactive, non-games. I really think that the most amount of non-games that occur right now in GOAT format are a result of these 3 cards. I think these 3 are the biggest offenders. The difference between resolving these and not resolving these or drawing them is just, it's too much. And they're too free. You have to, I really like cards where you have to set up for your pluses, or there's some cost to plus, or it goes the same thing with BLS. It just shouldn't have been light and dark. It's just way too easy. BLS, if it were released and it was maybe 3 different archetypes in the grave, that'd be really cool at this point in the game. But light and dark were already the most powerful attributes. So the problem with this video is I was looking over the ban list for a few minutes before doing this, and I just 100% know I'm going to be playing a GOAT format match in a day or two, and I'm going to be like, fuck, I forgot that card. Or like I'm going to shut off my computer and like go to bed here because it's a little late, and I'm going to just like be sleeping there, and it's going to be like that SpongeBob meme where like my eyes just like go wide open, and I'm like, just fuck, I totally forgot to discuss that card. So I don't know. Let me know if I'm missing anything. Let me know in the comments what you guys would change in the ban list, or really what you think game design wise some of the issues are. And I'll say this: I love Goat and Edison format. It's more just kind of a thought exercise, and seeing what we could change if we could go back in time, which of course we can't unless you have a time wizard, but I don't. So thanks for watching, guys. See you later.